Dr. Jordan Peterson, who has a great deal of respect for the United Kingdom, speaks of his admiration for the UK and the Queen following her passing. He has said that the Queen of England was quite the woman. What more has Dr. Peterson said of the Queen, and what can we take away from Queen Elizabeth II's personalities? This video highlights the answers to those questions, so stay with me till the end of the video. Now, without any further delay, let's get right into the video. First up, Dr. Jordan Peterson's admiration for the Queen. A famous psychologist who heard the news of the Queen's dying and thought on the democratic worth of the monarchy said that Britain has a lot to be proud of after hearing the news about the Queen's passing. According to Dr. Jordan Peterson, who was speaking on a platform in Manchester at the time that the news of the passing of the Queen became public, admiration should be directed towards the UK, its constitutional monarchy, and Queen Elizabeth II's reign, which has lasted for 70 years. During a question and answer session, he stated that the monarchy has wisdom and that he believed it would be able to withstand the passage of time. The well-known Canadian psychologist has been conducting lectures around the UK in conjunction with the release of his most recent book, 12 More Rules for Rules. Some of the locations he's visited include Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Birmingham. As news of the death spread, he was questioned about how he believed it may affect Britain and the conversation that veered off into a sidetrack about the ideals that should be upheld by a royal family. The following is an excerpt from what he had to say to the audience, quote, "I'm a great admirer of the constitutional monarchy system. I think there's a wisdom about it, especially the way that your country's managed it, which is more, it's worked better than how any other country's managed it, maybe ever. That's really something, you know? How you have the executive, legislative, judicial, and symbolic weights, and the monitor holds the symbolic weight. That's really smart because it separates it to some degree from the political," he said, as he compared the weekly meeting that will now take place between King Charles and Liz Truss to a kind of humiliating confession. He told those who were listening that they can imagine how useful it was psychologically for the Prime Minister, who has monarchical temptations in some sense, to have to go on to a regular basis to this remarkable person who's seen this immense span of political history and confessed in some real sense, and to be subject to her cautious and wise judgment, because he thinks she was a woman who was traditional and cautious and wise to the highest degree. His words were that the people of the United Kingdom had someone around to scare all of their prime ministers. That's a very wonderful concept, and that he is sure that she did a fantastic job. He referred to the late Queen as quite the woman and said, "That's a really good idea." The statement was met with applause from the audience at this moment. Quote, "She was astonishingly devoid of controversies throughout that entire era, and it's a hell of a thing to handle for 70 years, he continued. It's a hell of a thing to do for 70 years. Dr. Peterson continued by making a comparison between the United Kingdom and other countries such as the US, and he suggested that previous presidents of the United States, such as Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, have acquired a similar role to that of a monarch. He stated that there was a desire for the symbolic weight that the leader should exhibit. Quote, "This monarchical heritage is something that is very attractive to people who don't have that because it's so theatrical, it's so distinctive." He added, quote, "People who don't have that are terribly attracted to it because it's so unusual." In a more serious reflection, he stated that there is a real chance that the monarchy will disintegrate over the years like it has in other European countries. However, he added he's certainly not saying he wants that to happen, but because that sort of thing is so difficult to maintain, especially in the modern world. Let's look at what the personality profile that describes the Queen would be if analyzed by a psychologist like Dr. Jordan Peterson. As a psychologist who applies personality theories to the development of the true leadership of Dr. Peterson were to analyze the personality profile that best describes Elizabeth II's character, here's what would be applicable. Although the Queen of the United Kingdom has not given many personal interviews, there is considerable consensus on her 5 most important personality traits based on analysis of her behavior, her speeches, and interviews with people who are close to her. Most experts agree that Elizabeth II was characterized as an introverted, practical, logical, responsible, and serene person. You know, not many people would agree with Queen Elizabeth being introverted. Well, maybe she is after all. The introverted character explains why she preferred not to actively seek or draw attention to to herself and preserve her privacy. People who hold public positions assume public exposure is a duty that they fulfill with a sense of obligation. It is a social responsibility they accept with a certain degree of stoicism. One of her hobbies to escape the media pressure was walking alone with her horses or dogs. Next, let's talk about the Queen and pragmatism. A person more practical than theoretical, her attention was mainly focused on the problems of the here and now. She preferred to solve concrete problems rather than rambling about the future possibilities. Interpersonal conflicts were therefore a constant source of stress for the monarch, and family dramas at the end of her life took a toll on her health, leaving her physically and emotionally exhausted. Oh yes, the Queen was a very logical being. Giving primacy to reason over emotion, Elizabeth II was a logical person. This characteristic can sometimes be confused with distance and coldness. Highly rational people may have difficulty empathizing with the emotions of others. There are clearly two occasions the Aberfan mine collapsed in: 1996, where 116 children and 28 adults died, and the tragic accident of Princess Diana in 1997, where emotions came to the forefront. Although she initially kept her distance, thanks to her humility and ability to listen, Elizabeth II was able to correct the situation in time. For example, Tony Blair's sage advice led her to change her mind about Diana's funeral. And of course, Queen Elizabeth II is a very responsible soul. Her most characteristic personality trait was discipline and a preference for leading an orderly life in the chaos and uncertainty of global political upheavals. Routines and rituals were extremely important in her daily life. For example, her preference for compliance with the strict rules of protocol. From an early age, the young Elizabeth II was described as conscientious, obedient, and orderly when compared to her sister Margaret, who had a more restless and spontaneous character. Her sense of responsibility was the banner of her leadership. Next, let's talk about how emotionally stable she was. Her serene and collected character made her guests feel comfortable in her presence. Although she could convey an image of seriousness, those who dealt with her always mentioned her sense of humor, such as when she replied to the Canadian Prime Minister, quote, "Thank you for making me feel so old, Mr. Prime Minister of Canada," or participated in the London 2012 Olympic Games alongside Secret Agent 007. So what lessons can we learn from this historical figure? I'll talk about 3 lessons that I hope will be useful to you. The first of the lessons to learn from Queen Elizabeth II is authenticity. Know yourself well. Popular psychologist Jordan Peterson says the best thing you can do in life is to invest in knowing your own personality and the personalities of the people you regularly live and work with. Knowing the virtues and limitations of your personality helps you not only be a humble person, but also to surround yourself with people who can give you good advice and thus enhance your professional and personal development. Next is legacy. People come and go, but institutions remain in time. Likewise, kings and queens come and go, but the monarchy as an institution remains. The Queen was the incarnation of an ideal of society and personified collective values that are passed on to the future generations. It's never too early to wonder about her legacy. How would you like to be remembered? Authenticity was Elizabeth II's personal mark. Her genuine personality won the hearts of the British people, who bid her farewell with deep affection and devotion. Next up on the lessons to learn from Queen Elizabeth II, purpose. Present a collective mission that everyone can identify with. This common identification creates a sense of community that conveys optimism and togetherness. The symbolic value of leadership lies in this inclusive language. For example, Elizabeth II addressed the British people during the pandemic saying, quote, "We will win and that victory will belong to all of us." That's exactly what everyone needed to hear at that moment of collective vulnerability. Purpose is a sedative to alleviate suffering in difficult times. Well, that concludes today's video. If you found the video helpful, please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. Also, do let me know in the comments section what you admire most about the Queen and how you would like to be remembered. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.